All right. Hello, everyone. We are live here with Rachel Griffin and Stephanie Garber, and we are talking tonight about the nature of witches. If everybody wants to say hello real quick.
Hi.
So thank you all for joining. For those of you who are new to our shop, this event is being hosted by The Novel Neighbor. We are an independent and women-owned and operated bookshop in St. Louis, Missouri. And we are so excited to begin tonight's event for one of our most anticipated releases of the year, which is The Nature of Witches. Again, I have it right here. Just so everybody knows, if you order a copy from our shop, we will have signed book plates that we will have available for pickup or for shipping. Plus, if you email authorevents@thenovelneighbor.com before 8:30 p.m., and I'll put that up on the screen multiple times, that tomorrow morning we're going to send you a link from Sourcebooks Fire, the publisher of this wonderful novel, to get an exclusive tote bag for The Nature of Witches. So without further ado, tonight we will be in conversation with the incredible Stephanie Garber and Rachel Griffin herself. Stephanie and Rachel, thank you so much for joining us and doing this event. We are so excited.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Stephanie is the #1 New York Times and Sunday Times bestselling author of the Caraval series, which has been translated in over 25 languages. Her newest book, Once Upon a Broken Heart, releases September 28th of this year. Congratulations, that's coming up very soon. And when she's not writing, she's usually reading or watching television shows with vampires. Now that her dream of becoming a published author has come true, her new dream is to visit Club 33 at Disneyland, one that I share. So thank you for moderating tonight's conversation, Stephanie.
I'm thrilled to be here.
And our author, Rachel Griffin, writes young adult novels inspired by the magic of the world around her. She is born and raised in the Pacific Northwest, and Rachel has a deep love of nature, from the mountains to the ocean and all the towering evergreens in between. She adores moody skies and thunderstorms and hopes more vampires will settle down in her beloved state of Washington. A common theme already. On her path to writing novels, Rachel graduated from Seattle U with a Bachelor of Science in Diagnostic Ultrasound, and she now writes full-time from her home, which I'm assuming is where you are.
Mm-hmm.
And when she isn't writing, you can find her wandering the Pacific Northwest, reading by the fire, or drinking copious amounts of coffee and tea. She lives with her husband, small dog, and growing collection of houseplants. Thank you again, ladies, for joining us and doing this wonderful event. I'm going to pop off screen and let you guys do your event. So thank you, and I will see you at the end.
Awesome. Thank you, Cassie.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Yay! I am so excited to be here, and huge congratulations, Rachel.
Oh, thank you so much.
How are you feeling?
I feel great. It has been like the most exciting, like overwhelming, but in the best possible way week. It is so cool that it's out, that I can walk into a store and see it on a shelf, and I'm getting tagged in all of these beautiful posts, and it's been like a total dream of a week.
I am so glad. And I think I love the cover, but I also I am so obsessed with this design. I kind of just want to leave it on my coffee table at all times because it is just so pretty. And for anyone who hasn't ordered yet, I'm just going to give a shameless plug because this is just the first print run only, correct?
Yep.
So you want to make sure you get this beautiful book, or if you want to have it for a gift for someone in the future, I recommend making sure you have it. So it's beautiful and gorgeous, and I love it.
Oh my gosh. When I got the email that showed the design, I literally screamed in my office, and my husband came running in and was like, "What's wrong?" And it's just more beautiful than I ever could have imagined.
Oh, it is gorgeous, and I'm so happy for you, and I'm happy for me that I have it.
Thank you.
Okay, so I always like to start out these conversations by asking the author, what is your quick pitch for the book? It doesn't have to be the official pitch. It can be long. It can be short. How would you describe The Nature of Witches?
So I always start by saying that it's young adult contemporary fantasy, and it's set in a world where witches have long maintained the climate, and they're starting to lose control of it. And it follows Clara, who's the main character, and her magic is tied to all 4 seasons. And she is the strongest, most powerful witch alive, and the only person strong enough to stabilize the collapsing atmosphere. But her magic is able to go after the people she cares about most. And so when she falls in love with a spring witch, she has to choose between this magic that the world desperately needs and this boy that she has come to love.
I just got chills, which takes a lot because it's hot here. I love that. So before I get into questions about your world building, which I'm semi-obsessed with, this is your debut novel, which is just so huge. It's such a huge accomplishment to get to make this happen. And I love hearing stories, like publication stories. So I'd love to know just like a little bit about your publication journey. How many books did you write before this was your first book? And how has your experience been since it's been out in the world?
So yeah, it has been a long journey for me. I started seriously pursuing publication 9 years ago. This, The Nature of Witches, is the 3rd book that I wrote. The first book that I wrote was dystopian. I love dystopian. I'm so ready for it to start coming back. But the novel that I wrote, I knew I wasn't really bringing anything new to the table there. So I wrote a second book. And that book is actually the one that got me my agent. I went on submission with that novel. It did not sell. And then parted ways with my agent and just kind of felt like I started over, queried again with this new book, and then went from there. But it was a long journey, and I'm thankful for that in a way, because I feel like the amount of time it took enabled me to like find friends in the community, so that now that I'm debuting, I don't feel like I am going it alone. You know, I've already had a lot of friends from the community. And so I think that has been one of the absolute best things about debuting, is being able to go through this with people that I adore and who I've been on the journey with for a really long time. And so that part of it has been wonderful. And now seeing it on shelves is just, I don't think it will ever get old. I hope it doesn't. I don't think it will. Just every store I go into, I'm just blown away that my book is there. So it's just been such a dream. And I'm thrilled that this is the book I get to debut with, that I feel like this is the perfect way for me to enter the publishing world. And so I just couldn't be more excited.
I love that. I love it. And I love it too, because I feel like definitely, like, you know, when you've been writing 9 years, it's a long journey. And I feel like a lot of us have those journeys, but it's easy to forget that it's like, no, you're gaining so much. And those friendships, I really feel like they are so, so invaluable and so important. And I'm happy for you. So one of my questions, I'm obsessed with the world building.
Oh, thank you.
I love that you like your take on witches and how you did this power. And I'm really curious, what drew you to witches out of all the paranormals out there?
So I think like my original inspiration for the idea was, what if there were a girl who changed with the seasons? And so I knew right off the bat that the book was going to be like heavily influenced by nature and the natural world. And so when I started thinking about what kinds of people would have a really deep connection to the earth, I instantly thought of witches, because I've always thought of witches as people who had this like very deep, reverent respect and connection to the natural world. You know, they love herbs. A lot of times they're like very into plants and flowers, and just have this like almost reverence for the earth. And so it felt like a very natural progression that if I were going to give people some kind of like magic or power over the world, that those people would be witches.
So have you always had an interest in nature?
Always, ever since I was a little kid, the house I grew up in looks over this lake, and from a young age, I remember you could see storms like forming on the other side of the water, and I would stay up late, long past everyone else in my house going to bed, and just watch these storms and was totally fascinated by them. And so I just completely grew up with this total fascination and awe for the natural world.
And it sounds like, just based on your bio, you also love the paranormals. You mentioned the vampires, wanting them to come to Washington.
Yeah.
Do you think you'll ever write about other paranormals or just witches?
I would love to write about other paranormal things. I for sure would love to write about vampires one day, or find a way to, if I found the right idea. I love different kinds of magic and supernatural elements in our world, and imagining them, because I kind of already think there is so much magic in this world when you think about it. And just like, I love the idea of kind of magnifying that and thinking about those things in the world. And so I just have always loved paranormal elements, and I probably always will.
I think it's a very valid love. And I mean, I just put that in because I was really curious, because, I'm obsessed with paranormal elements. And I agree, like, depending on how you look at the world, I think you either choose to see the magic or you don't see the magic. And I love how you tied the magic in this book to the seasons. I love the way you did this. How did you develop that?
So that was like my favorite part of writing this book. It was so much fun figuring out this magic system, because I wanted each system, each season's magic to feel different and feel wholly its own. So really, I just started from the question of, okay, well, if winter had magic, what would that feel like? And I tried to really pull that from what winter itself as the season feels like. Winter, you get these very intense winter storms. A lot of times it feels like it comes on suddenly. It's blankets everything with snow. And so it felt like winter magic would be aggressive. It would come off confident. It would feel very powerful and intense. And then I felt like those would also be personality traits that winter witches would exhibit. But then when you think of like spring, for example, spring feels like a patient season, because you've been waiting for it for a while. You've gotten through the harshest of the seasons, and you're waiting for it to come. And summer's on the horizon, and you're starting to see things come back to life. And so there's a lot of hope and optimism associated with the season. So I felt like spring would feel like a much more gentle magic, that it would kind of flow on this current of hopefulness. And so that's really how I tried to develop the magic of the world, was just by personifying the seasons and, magnifying the traits they already have up to 11.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And I love that you actually created an Enneagram sort of test, right? So people can figure out what type.
Yes, I haven't actually posted it yet, but I have a quiz that people will be able to take and to find out what season witch they might be.
Ooh, I can't wait to take it. Which one are you?
I'm a spring witch. I am actually in the world. If you're born on an equinox or solstice, that's how you're born a witch. And I was actually born on the spring equinox. And so I, in my world, would actually be a spring witch.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool. Oh my gosh, I love it. So I could keep asking world building questions forever, and I might come back to a few more. But let's talk about character a little, specifically your main character. She's sensitive. She feels a lot. She often feels too much. And she has this power that's too much. So I want to know, how did you craft her? And did you come up with her power first, or her personality first, or were the two kind of developed in tandem? Let's talk about her.
Yes. So my original inspiration for Clara, like I said, was a girl who changed with the seasons. I really wanted to explore this idea of of a main character who changes, and of course she's being told she changes too much, and that becomes this part of her identity, and that it's a bad thing. And so I really wanted to explore the theme of change, and setting it against the seasons, I feel like allowed me to do that in this really beautiful way, so that as Clara starts to recognize that there is actually strength in herself that comes from these things that she's been told previously are bad, it's set against this backdrop that shows change as a really beautiful thing. And I knew that in the beginning, I wanted her to really believe these things she's been told about herself, that she does have this magic that she believes is too powerful and that she's completely out of control. She is very in her head and very sensitive, and she believes all of those things are bad. And so I really wanted her to be solidified in those beliefs about herself, so that as she goes on her journey, she's able to reclaim these things about herself and realize that they're actually strengths and start to embrace them instead.
I love this. I mean, and I love that idea for a character. I think it's just like such an inspired character. And I feel like it's also so relatable when you feel like, I don't know about you, but for me, like as a teenager, I always felt like my emotions were too much. I just felt like so much was too much. And it was just really hard to accept that. Did you put much of your character in your character? Did you put much of yourself into Clara, like, or any of your other characters? Like, how do you do that? How do you balance that as an author, like character versus self?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's actually something I've been thinking about a lot as I write more stories, because Clara is so much of who I am. Clara got so many of my deep-seated insecurities about being afraid that I am too much, that I am too sensitive, that I'm too emotional. And that feels extremely vulnerable, like putting this story out in the world where Clara does hold so much of who I am. I'm very, very sensitive. I have always been that way. I will always be that way. It's just it's just a core part of who I am. And that's a really vulnerable thing, you know, when you start putting it out in the world, and people either relate with her or don't. And you know, you're kind of feel like you're wearing your heart on your sleeve. And but I also think it's been so special hearing from readers who just like resonate with her so deeply and see themselves in her. It's so much more rewarding than I even could have imagined.
I love that. I love that. And I agree. It's so hard to put those pieces. I think it feels so vulnerable, but I know for me as a reader, when I find a book and I'm like, I feel, and I can think of a very specific book where a character was feeling something and I never knew anyone else, and it's silly looking back, that anyone else in the world had ever had the same feeling. And suddenly I was like, oh my gosh, you know, it was just like this light bulb moment, like, okay, no, you know what? I bet a lot of people feel this way. And suddenly I just didn't feel so alone. So
and that's so powerful. It's so powerful. So yeah.
Did you put pieces of yourself in any of your other characters?
So saying the love interest is this just very sweet, hopeful person. So saying got all of my like love of plants. He's a botanist. He looks at the world and just sees all of the beauty in it, and almost has this reverence for the, you know, plants and wildflowers and the world around him. And I feel like that very much is part of myself. He's also just, to his core, a very hopeful, optimistic person. And I also tend to be very hopeful and optimistic in how I view the world. And so he definitely got parts of myself. I would say Paige is the character who I do not really identify with, but wisheth that I did. Paige is a winter witch. She speaks up for herself. She says what's on her mind. She does not care if she doesn't sugarcoat things. She's always totally honest. And there have definitely been times in my life where I wish that I could just say what I mean, and that I didn't, you know, that she owns who she is. And I feel like that has been a long journey for me of being totally comfortable in my skin and in who I am.
Isn't it so fun to write characters like that?
Yes.
I feel like I learned so much about myself from writing characters who aren't like me. Like, it's great. And I'm glad you mentioned Sang, because I did want to talk about him and the romance in this book. And I have the question. Okay, here we go. So what, like, I really want to know, like, one, what was your favorite part about writing this romance? And then two, how did you approach writing a romance for a girl who changes with the seasons? Was it an organic thing, or did you plan in advance? Like, this is the kind of love interest she would need. How did you approach it?
Yeah, I feel like that part was really difficult for me, and I put a lot of work into it because Clara is different in each season, and there are different parts of her personality that are stronger in different parts or in different seasons. And so I knew there needed to be someone who was just really steady. And someone who just kind of saw beyond superficial things into the core of who she was. Because what I really wanted was, I think that when you meet someone, and this can be a friend, or this can be a romance, or it could be a mentor, but when there's someone who sees you the way that you want to be seen, and really values the things in yourself that you value about yourself, it helps you to embrace who you are. And Clara needed, I think, a little encouragement and being able to embrace this magic that she is afraid of. And that comes from the steadiness of someone seeing who she is in every season and loving her for it. And I think that when she had that almost that anchor point of being seen and being understood, it enabled her to feel like she could embrace her magic more and push the limits and really come into her full potential with this power that she has been given.
Oh, I love that. I'm just like, wish I could write down some of the things you said, because they're great quotes. I hope someone else out there is writing these things down. So one of the things that I think is really awesome, I love this, is that you became, I wrote it down because I want to get it all right, is that you became a certified weather spotter for the National Weather Service.
Yes. I am such a weather nerd. Like I said, I have loved it since I was a little girl and been totally fascinated by it. And when I was doing research for this book, I was reading a lot of books, and I was, of course, reading a lot of articles online. And my husband actually saw that the National Weather Service was coming to our local airport and offering this class to become a certified weather spotter. And I thought, that sounds awesome. And so we actually both went and took this class, and you learn how to look out for signs of extreme weather, different kind of cloud formations, or if you're starting to get a ton of snow accumulation or hail or sleet, if you're getting thunderstorms with lightning strikes that are in very short succession. And, the National Weather Service has weather stations all over the world, obviously, but they can't be in every localized area all at once. And so weather spotters kind of serve as the eyes and ears on the ground. And it was just a really fun way to learn more about weather. And then I tried to tie what I learned directly into the magic system of this book, because there is a lot of extreme weather. And I wanted Clara to basically pull readers into like the eye of the storm, to be able to experience these storms as they're happening, but kind of wrapped up in magic. And so it ended up being a great way to do research, and it was just really fun.
That is so awesome. How did it change your world building and your magic? Or did you do it as you were writing the book, or did it come in and rearrange things a bit?
So it rearranged things a bit, and that initially it wasn't quite as technical. Like I didn't actually go into as many details. Like now there is a scene that you actually follow a thunderstorm as it turns into a tornado. And it's definitely wrapped in magic. And so it doesn't feel like this, technical thing. But initially I wasn't going in depth in those kinds of descriptions. I wasn't letting the storms play out as detailed as they do on the page. But once I had so many details and they're so cool, I really tried to just weave them in with the magic and let us really sit with these extreme weather events.
Oh my gosh, I love it. That is awesome. So one of the other things that you did that I think it's not quite research, well, it's not research, but I want to talk about your pre-order campaign.
Yeah.
Which is just so awesome. So for anyone who doesn't know, Rachel did a pre-order campaign where anyone who pre-ordered the book, sent in the receipt, a tree was planted. So I would love to know how you came up with this idea and how many trees were planted.
So I knew early on that I wanted to do a pre-order campaign that was going to give back to the earth in some way. Like at its core, I really do feel like the nature of witches is a love letter to the earth. And so I wanted to bring it into the world in this special way. And so I started looking into different nonprofits that focused on environmentalism. And I found One Tree Planted, and I thought, how amazing would it be if we could plant a tree for every pre-order we had? And so I reached out to this nonprofit. They loved the idea. And so I was able to partner with them and then offer this really cool thing of planting trees. And then readers got so excited about it too. And it was just like the most special way to I feel like bring my book into the world. And so I was just so thankful I was able to do that. And I'm going to announce next week how many trees were planted, but I'm really excited. We're going to have a forest.
I think I'd seen you on Instagram and I was like, that is the coolest. You wrote a book and then you planted a forest. Like,
that's just, I'm so blown away by the support and the excitement over this campaign. It just completely made my heart burst.
Oh, I love it. And it was such a great idea. I loved it so much.
Thank you.
Okay. This is going out of order a little bit, but it's kind of springboarding off of one of the things you said when you were talking about being a weather spotter and how like that informed the magic. Were there any other pieces of research that you did that were really fascinating or changed anything or just kind of inspired pieces for this story unexpectedly?
So I definitely, when I was writing the book, the initial plot of the book did not include a solar eclipse at all. And as I was drafting the book, this isn't really research, but my husband is a pilot as a hobby. He's been flying since he was a teenager, and one of his pilot friends had told him that we should go. Sorry, I'm going to take a sip of water. Excuse me. One of his pilot friends had said that we should fly down and watch the 2017 total solar eclipse because it was happening like 45 minutes away flying. And so we did and watched the total solar eclipse from 17,000 feet in the air. And it was like a life-changing event. It was so, so cool. And that made me realize that, oh my gosh, I should put an eclipse in the book. And now it's funny because so much of the plot revolves around the eclipse. And so I ended up doing a lot of research on solar eclipses and on how throughout history, people had different explanations for what they thought was happening. And that was a really fun piece of research to do that just all became part of the book because I flew down and saw the solar eclipse.
I love it. That is so interesting. What would you say is one of the most interesting explanations you found historically for the solar eclipse?
So a lot of different cultures thought that like they were being punished or, that they had to do with like the gods being angry or that it was a really bad omen. And so almost throughout history, it was always seen as like this very negative thing that like people had anchored the gods, or that like they were being looked upon with disfavor. And so they were always viewed as these very negative, ominous things, which I always thought was so fascinating. But when you think about it, what happens during a solar eclipse, if you're in the path of totality, everything gets very dark, and the temperature instantly drops. It is like this amazing experience to behold, because it happens instantaneously, and then nocturnal animals kind of come out and start to become active, and the animals that are more active during the day quiet down. It's this really amazing experience, because it happens so quickly in the middle of the day, and so it makes sense that it would be such an ominous thing. But that was a really fun part of the research.
Any other research you did?
Not really. Definitely did research on like herbs and plants and flowers, but it was all really pretty much related to weather and the eclipse.
Do you plan on writing any more in this world?
This is a standalone. I love this world, and if I had the right idea, I would love to come back to it. But as of right now, the right idea has not found me yet, and so I am moving on. But I would never say never with this world.
Can you tell us anything about what you are working on now? Is it a total secret? Are you working on? It sounds like you're working on something else.
Yes, I do have another book coming out next year, and I can't really talk too much about it, but it's another contemporary fantasy. It's another witchy story. It is set in the Pacific Northwest, and it's a very witchy book that I really love. It's got a lot of romance in it, and I'm so excited to be writing a book in the Pacific Northwest. I love it here so much. I would never want to live anywhere else. So it's really fun getting to immerse readers in this place that I love so much.
Oh, okay. So now we have to stalk your social media to make sure we find out how many trees were planted. And then do you have any idea when we're going to get to find out a little more about this book, when it'll be out?
I don't know. I think it's going to be soon. I think we're going to, we landed on a title a couple weeks ago. And so I think we're getting ready to start talking about it pretty soon.
Ooh, that is exciting. Ooh, titles are so hard. And I forgot to ask, how did you come up with the title for The Nature of Witches?
Yeah, titles are so hard. The Nature of Witches was not the original title for this book. The original title was With Lightning in Our Hands. That was my title. And it's more literary, but I still love it. I think it's beautiful. When I signed with my agent, we went on submission, and she wanted to give it like a more hooky, succinct title. So we actually then gave it a new title, which was Sunstruck, because the magic in this world comes from the sun. And then when it sold, we gave it a new title. And so I was walking around, and I was on a walk specifically trying to come up with titles. And I kept thinking about, well, what do I want the title to evoke? I wanted it to evoke magic, and I wanted it to evoke that it was heavily rooted in nature. And it just popped into my head, and I was so excited. And as soon as I thought of it, I was like, yes, this is our title. And thankfully my team loved it. And so we moved forward with it. And now I think it's the perfect title for the book.
It is a perfect title. I mean, I always like titles that let me know exactly like what I'm reading. So I love that it mentions witches, but then the way you weave nature in, it's just like absolutely perfect. And it sounds like it was a fairly easy journey, even though you had some other titles there.
Yeah, I think titles are really interesting. I find them very difficult to come up with, but I also think that once I land on a title I love and I'm really excited about it, it makes me feel even more connected to the project. And so I really like the aspect of picking out a title and landing on the perfect one. And so I really like that part of it.
Well, and I think there is like a perfect title for each book, which is what makes it tricky, because you can give a book numerous titles, but I think there's going to be one title that feels, more true than anything else. I feel like for me, that's part of the challenge, because when a title doesn't feel right, it's like, I know there's something better out there. There has to.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree.
So before, I have some witchy lightning round questions, but first, I want to ask if you've been reading anything. What would you recommend to people to read, or have you been reading anything good, or what would you recommend that people read after they finish The Nature of Witches?
So I love Shay Earnshaw. Shay Earnshaw also writes witchy stories that are very rooted in nature. So The Wicked Deep and Winterwood are two of my favorites. I absolutely love them. And I also think that, like, I love this is poetry, but I love Mary Oliver. Mary Oliver's poetry just really like immerses you, and it feels like she writes about the magic of the world in poetry. And so I really love Mary Oliver as well. And then one of my most anticipated reads, which I've not been able to read yet, is The Ones We're Meant to Find, which came out just a couple of weeks ago. That also focuses focuses on climate change, environmental aspects in the book. It's a sci-fi, and it has like the world's most beautiful cover. So I'm also really excited to read that one.
Ooh, who wrote that one? I feel like I've seen that.
That's Joan He.
Okay. I have seen that one. I don't think I knew it was climate, but
yeah. And so I'm really excited to read it. And it's a sister story, and I love sister stories. So I'm excited.
Ooh, okay. All right. So ready? We have some audience questions, but first we're going to do the witchy lightning round.
Okay.
All right. Practical magic or hocus pocus?
Practical magic.
Charmed or Sabrina the Teenage Witch?
Charmed.
Magnus Bane or Bonnie Bennett?
Bonnie Bennett.
Flying
Bonnie is so great. I love Bonnie Bennett. Okay.
Bonnie Bennett is amazing. Flying broomstick or crystal ball?
Crystal ball.
All right.
I don't like heights.
Okay, those are all my lightning round questions. And so now we're going to go to the audience, and we already have some questions. Okay, so, I don't know if I'm going to get this name wrong. It's Cera. I don't know if that's Sarah, but Sarah asks, who are other authors that inspire you? And would you ever want to collab with your characters and theirs? That's so fun.
Oh, I have so many writers who inspire me. Madeline Miller, who wrote Circe and The Song of Achilles. I just find her work so inspirational. Naomi Novik, who wrote Uprooted. I tend to really love books that they feel romantic in the way they talk about the world, even though like Uprooted is this very like dark forest, but it still is just this like really magical way of talking about the world. I'm very curious about how people co-write. I have never actually thought about co-writing or collaborating. I wouldn't say I would never do it. I find it fascinating. I would actually love to sit down with co-authors and see how they like divide up the work and how you build a story from the ground up with another person, because the writing aspect of it does feel so, I guess, isolated when you're just first drafting a story. So I find it fascinating that people co-write, and I would love to learn more about it. I've never thought about it though, but I wouldn't ever rule it out.
What made you enter? Okay, this is from Kayla. Kayla asks, what made you enter the publishing world and start writing?
So I've just always loved writing. I think, I, like so many writers, was just an avid reader growing up. I always loved stories. And when I was younger, I wrote a lot of poetry and a lot of songs. And so writing was always just something that I loved. And I learned at a young age that writing was really how I processed how I feel about situations in the world. And so it was just something that I've always really loved. I went to school for something totally different. And I kind of gave up writing after I graduated high school. I guess I didn't really feel like there was a path forward for some reason. And then about 10 years later, I found myself kind of unfulfilled in my day job and not very happy with it. And I asked myself if I could do anything in the whole world, what would it be? And I instantly knew I'd want to write. And so I picked it back up again, and I started writing my very first novel, and it completely fulfilled me in this way I hadn't felt since I was a kid.
Kayla asked another question, which I feel like is a great follow-up to all that, which is, what is your best advice for aspiring writers?
So I have two pieces of advice. I think the first one is to learn how to finish something. I think that not only is finishing a manuscript, it teaches you how to write a book, and you obviously use all of that going forward. But I think the biggest thing for me, when I finished my very first novel, it gave me this huge boost in confidence that I had not felt before. And it made me feel like, okay, I can do this. Like, I have written a book, I can write another book. And so it teaches you not only how to do it, but that you can do it. And I think that that's so beneficial. And so I think that learning how to finish is just a huge confidence boost. I also think that in writing, a lot of times, so many of us count ourselves out, or, we feel like we have imposter syndrome and we don't want to throw our hat in the ring. And I just think that you are your own best advocate and your own biggest champion. And don't self-reject. Give yourself these opportunities. If you want to apply for a mentorship program or start querying agents, throw your hat in the ring and give it a shot. You're your own best champion.
I love that advice. And I think that's so true. I don't think I'd heard anyone talk about the confidence you get from finishing the book, but I feel like there's something about that it's, it seems so daunting. And then once you do it, it's like, oh, let's do it again.
Yes. And for me, because I think you get these shiny ideas and it's so fun to sit down and start it, but then you get to the middle and it's just, we call it the murky middle for a reason. It's hard to get through. You lose that enthusiasm a little bit. And so I think a lot of us have this tendency to go and move on to the shiny new idea when there's just like so much you learn and so much you gain from finishing something.
I think that's so good. Here's another really good question. They're all really good questions, but this is kind of going in the vein of like entering the world of being an author. Advice for making author friends, especially when you're shy.
So, yeah, I love this question. I too am very shy. I'm extremely introverted. And I think unfortunately, the answer is to put yourself out there, even though it is uncomfortable. So for me, I met a lot of my writer friends initially online. I met them on Twitter because I got involved with a program called Pitch Wars. I started following writer hashtags and would just start interacting with people that I liked their presence online. I felt like, we'd click well. And it is unfortunately sending a DM and feeling awkward about it and hoping that, but so many of us, we want to make friends and form those connections. And then something recently I would say is Adrienne Young started a hashtag on Instagram called Find My Writing Community. It is a very active hashtag with tons of writers there looking to build those connections. And so I would definitely start scrolling through that hashtag. And there are so many people out there who are looking to build their own community and find their people within this world. And so they're out there, you just have to find them.
I think that's all great advice. And I'm going to add a couple pieces because I know for me, it was also super painful. I remember writing books and it was such a solo thing. And I was terrified. I started in the late 2000s during the height of blogs. And I remember being too afraid to post on a blog. And the way I had to meet people was in person. which just sounded horrifying for me. But there were a couple ways. One was SCBWI. And so now I know in-person events aren't happening, but when they do, I highly recommend getting involved with SCBWI, which is if you write YA or middle grade or picture books, it's the Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. They have regional events that are usually small and people are super friendly. They also have bigger conferences, but I've met and connected with so many people through those events. And I will say it's terrifying, and going was like one of the scariest things I've ever done. But I'm still good, like really close friends with people I've met at those things. So I agree with Rachel, like put yourself out there, put yourself online, but then also when things open up. The other thing I would say too is to go when things open up again. You're here, you're watching this virtual event, go to in-person events. That was the other way I made friends. And even if you don't have a local independent bookstore, I don't have a local independent bookstore. I would drive like 2 hours to go to events. And that was how I met other authors who lived somewhat near me. And that too was very scary. Like the first time I went to an author event and went in person. And so like just going, most of them are free. You can go to the event. And so like, you don't have to buy the book even. Like, it's always good to buy the book, but I also understand being on a budget, because I've been there many, many times. So that's my other recommendation.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I also went to a lot of local events, and you start recognizing people. It's a bunch of the same people. It's people who just love reading, and we're all kind of going to the same events, and so many readers are writers. And so I would go to these events and you start recognizing people, and you start saying hi when you go. And so I totally agree that in-person events are also a great way to meet other writers.
Yeah. And most of us are pretty shy there. So it's like, if you say hi, they're probably going to be real happy. Just tell yourself,
yes,
they want to meet you. It's a great community. Okay. So Rachel asks, do you ever see yourself writing outside of the fantasy genre?
Everything I've written so far has had at least a little bit of a speculative bent to it. So for the foreseeable future, all of the ideas I kind of have percolating do have at least a little bit of magic. Most of them are set in this world, and some of them, like The Nature of Witches, definitely leans heavier on the fantasy magic element. Some of them, like, you almost just have to buy that magic exists, but they definitely have a more contemporary feel to them. But I do, for the foreseeable future, most of my ideas definitely have some kind of magic or speculative element to
them. Here's another great question from Kayla. How do you know when to shelve a project and move on?
Oh, I think this one is tough. So for me, when I have shelved a project, it's for one of two reasons. One is when I feel like I've taken the project as far as I can take it, and I don't have any, clear vision for revision or for what would make it better. I feel like I've just come to the end of the line, and so I have shelved projects because of that. And then the other reason is if I've completely lost passion for it. And I think that one is a little trickier, because with every book I've written, The Nature of Witches included, you definitely get to a point where you have looked at it so many times and you're just like, oh, I don't want to look at this book again. But I think that's very different from when I don't feel connected to a story I'm working on anymore. And if I can't trace that back somewhere in the plot, or if I, trace that back to somewhere I took a wrong turn in the story I'm writing, that has also been when I've shelved a project. The last one I shelved was at 44,000 words, which for me, I don't write super long books, so I was very far into it. And I just didn't feel connected to it. I wasn't sure what I was saying. I wasn't excited about it anymore. And I had no clear vision for what needed to happen with it. And so so that was also why I've shelved a project before.
Those are such good answers, and I'm so glad someone asked that question, because I feel like there is that fine balance between finding like, oh my gosh, is it just that murky middle where I want
Yes.
to go chase the shiny new idea, or is it just really like sometimes it is the wrong story or the wrong time or whatever. So I love those answers. Okay. There are multiple Kaylas. So here's a different Kayla. And I love this question. So many good questions. What is the book that changed your life the most?
Oh my gosh, what is the book that changed my life the most? Okay, listen, I have to talk about Twilight. I have to talk about Twilight. Twilight was the first book that I read that I felt like it completely centered like the teenage experience in a way that deeply resonated with me. I read it when I was younger, and I completely fell in love with this book. And I thought, oh my gosh, I can do that. Like, I want to center the like messy, raw emotions of the teenage experience. I absolutely love stories that do that. And Twilight was the first one I read where I felt like, oh, I can do this. Like, so I have to say Twilight. That was, I think, the book that really made me feel like, that there was space for me in the industry. Naomi Novik's Uprooted had a huge impact on me in the way that I write, just because it inspired me. So I was so inspired by it. And I came away from it feeling like that magic of when you read something and it's so good, and just, it made me want to write. And so I think those are the two that come to mind for me.
I love that. Twilight also changed my life the most.
Yeah.
Okay. Going back up. Okay. Okay. So Isabel asks, how long did it take from your career switch to selling The Nature of Witches?
Okay, so I had a few career switches. So I was doing diagnostic ultrasound when I first started writing, and when I started taking my writing seriously. And in there, I had a shoulder injury that I was unable to continue my career in ultrasound. And so I got a job at a small tech startup and did like marketing and PR for them for a couple years. And let's see. So it was 2012 to, I guess, 2015. So the big career switch was about 6 years. And now I write full time, but also for full transparency, I write full time because I don't have children, and because I have a partner who, has, a stable income and things like that. And so that's why I've been able to do that.
Okay, this is a great question that we haven't talked about. How did you come up with the cover? This is Maria's question.
Okay, so authors don't really have a lot of say in their covers, actually. And so a lot of times your team will ask you, what kind of mood are you going for? They'll ask for examples of covers that you love, or examples of covers that didn't click with you for whatever reason. But the cover is fully your publisher's wheelhouse. And so I had created a mood board on Pinterest of images and things that I felt really represented the story, or got the tone and the mood of the book. And this photo was actually on that mood board. And the photo is done by this incredible photographer named Monica Lazar. And so my publisher was actually able to track down this photographer and use this incredible image as the cover of the book. And I just feel like it turned out so perfectly. I love this cover so much. I feel like it just totally encompasses the story so well. And I just feel like my publisher knocked it out of the park.
Wow. Okay, that is a great cover story. I love that so much. And I'm guessing since Cassie's back on, we're wrapping up.
We are going to wrap up. traditionally, as a Novel Neighbor tradition, we do just a couple rapid fire questions with both of you because we think it's very fun and, we're all about that. So really, really quickly, Stephanie and Rachel, what are your personal favorite season out of the year?
Autumn.
Fall. Same.
Incredible. What do you order at a coffee shop?
An Americano with no room.
It depends on if I'm traveling or if I'm meeting someone for fun drinks. Typically, I will get iced coffee with half and half. But if I'm going out for fun, I will get a mocha with whipped cream.
Ooh. What music are you listening to the most right now?
Taylor Swift, always.
I've been listening a lot to I don't know how you say his last name. I think it's like Steve Jabal. It's the soundtrack to Transformers. It's really good writing music. Really good writing music.
What book are you bringing with you to a deserted island?
Oh, that's very difficult. I think I'm bringing Mary Oliver's poetry because it makes me feel at peace. And if I were deserted or if I was stranded on an island, I think I'd want to feel a sense of calm.
I bring Karen Marie Moning's Fever series. Because that's my favorite series. And there's like a ton of books in the series. So I'm cheating and bringing the whole series with me.
I'm bringing a library. Okay, everybody has to have this answer post-COVID. What is your favorite meal to cook yourself?
I love macaroni and cheese.
Pancakes.
Oh, yeah.
I make pancakes all the time, like blueberry, banana chocolate chip. Like when COVID struck, I bought 15 pounds of pancake mix.
Oh my gosh.
I love that. Okay, last one. Now that we are moving on to a post-COVID era, what is the first place you all want to travel?
I want to go to Scotland. I had a trip planned to Scotland in May of last year that we canceled. And so I would really love to rebook and go to Scotland.
I want to go to Disneyland. Similar to Rachel, I had a trip for my birthday last year. My sister and I were going to go to Disneyland and we canceled that. So I am really looking forward to booking that again.
Yeah, especially as they open up that Marvel campus. Very cool.
Oh, I don't know about this.
There was a very cool video of Spider-Man today where he's actually swinging around the park. If you look it up, it's very cool.
That is the first thing I'm going to do after this. Yeah.
All right, ladies, thank you so much for doing this with us tonight. We had a blast, and honestly, virtually no drop off in viewership. So everybody was riveted the entire time.
Yay!
I want to repeat, if you have not ordered your copy of the book, you can get signed book plates from us at the Novel Neighbor. It's beautiful. We love it. The other thing that I wanted to say, if you would like a tote bag for attending tonight's event, if you email us by 8:30 p.m. tonight, so you have about a half-hour window, it's authorvisits@thenovelneighbor.com. I was putting up a little banner throughout. Might have said events at the top, but it's authorvisits@thenovelneighbor.com. And we are so excited to have you as part of the Novel Neighbor family. Thank you so much, Rachel. Congratulations on an incredible release. And Stephanie, we are looking forward to your release this September.
Yes.
All right. Well, have a wonderful evening. Thank you for joining us, and we will talk to you both soon.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.